Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something that is really amusing for me as someone who's a coach, someone who's been putting out daily fitness and lifting content for over a decade. Started training well over 20 years ago, 25 years, 26, whatever it's been. I've lost track at this point. The information I put out is pretty well supported by the research, pretty well supported by observations as a coach, observing lifters over the decades. And it's always amazing when people will look for exceptions to a rule, right, to somehow debunk it, and the reality is what most of us are doing when we're putting out information, myself included, we're trying to give you guys the best information possible for most circumstances, and occasionally giving you exceptions and knowing when you might be the exception to that rule. Okay, and one of the ones that's always hilarious, and I've seen other coaches reference this, when we discuss muscle mass in the bench press, which coach after coach after coach has observed this, like powerlifting coaches around the world all realize this real quick. Scientific research looking into max benches versus DEXA scans on lifters. Like everyone universally agrees that obviously leverages and arm lengths matter, but by and large, when other factors are equal, just having a bigger chest and having a bigger, thicker upper body, more muscle in it, usually produces a much stronger bench press. Okay? You can usually move more weight. Now, obviously, range of motion's a factor. Obviously arching and grip width and all these things are a big deal. Someone like me, I move the bar a pretty long distance. I have to have a lot of muscle in my chest and everything to bench. But people will point out, but there's this guy, I saw this guy who's 150 pounds and he can bench 415. And they'll use that as if that somehow invalidates that data. And the reality is the guy still has a big pecs. He has good leverages and big pecs. But it doesn't change the general rule, because the assumption the person has is that they have now debunked all these studies and all these coaches because they found an exception somewhere. Well, that's well and good, but how does that help you? Right? It seems like oftentimes people are looking for an exception to a rule rather than realizing something is probably generally true. And if I use that advice to my advantage, I'll probably reach my goals more effectively. Okay? Case in point. All of that being said, you look at the overwhelming amount of evidence, and we know that if you have big pecs and big triceps, and you work on getting them bigger, your bench press is probably going to go up. So what I would say to the people who, like to find these exceptions, it's like, okay, well, great. So is that going to help you get to a 400 plus bench? Like, did finding that exception because you found that guy with that high neural drive, perfect leverages, who refuses to train the rest of his body and just has pecs? Because he still has big pecs. Okay. Nobody with a 405 plus bench doesn't have big pecs. Because I found those exceptions, and you see the guy shirtless, like, dude's got a big old set of teddies on him. He might not have a lot of arm or back or leg, but he's got big pecs on that light frame. But I would say to those people, well, then you do it. If you've got this exception to the rule, then what is going to be your game plan to get to a 415 bench while weighing 150? Since you're talking about that guy doing it, do you have a strategy? Like, is this going to help you? So what's your strategy going to be? Clone him and inject his DNA into you? Like, what are you going to do? Have gene therapy to get whatever genes he's got to do it? And then ignore the rest of your body and focus just on wider grip benching and flies and build your chest up? Because that's the only practical solution, except you don't have the gene therapy. Whereas what I would say to those people in general, you should probably focus on getting a lot bigger. If you want your bench press to go up, you should probably build a lot of muscle in your upper body Obviously chest, triceps, shoulders. Building bigger back can help with your stability on it, reduce the chances you're going to get hurt. Like, let's do all that instead of finding these exceptions. But people like to do it in everything. It's like we can discuss data on protein and protein bioavailability and muscle mass, and then it's like, but there's a vegan somewhere who's pretty jacked. Well, okay, but that doesn't mean that it was easier for him. And what people need to remember, what would happen if that same person consumed animal protein? Right? That's the problem with these exceptions to the rule. What would happen if this person did this stuff right? So if that person added, 100 grams of animal source protein every day to their diet, how much more jacked would they be? Because usually they're not even that jacked, by the way. That's fine. Same thing with a 415 bench. The 415 bench is great. I can't bench 415 these days. But is it really that great? Especially when the guy doesn't have any other lifts. But here's the point. So you take that guy, that exception to the rule that people think they found that's not really the exception. What would happen if he built everything? What would happen if that guy put another 15 pounds of solid muscle on? What would happen if that same guy did a bunch of tricep and upper back work and delt work and just got a lot thicker up top? And instead of being 150, he bulked up to 170, 180. Would he bench 500 pounds? That's the point they're missing. So they like to find these exceptions, these outliers, and then you go, well, what would happen if they did stuff right? And I don't mean the best in the world. Obviously, we're not talking about the John Hacks and stuff, because he's obviously doing things right, including picking really good parents. But he's pretty big, isn't he? I mean, realistically speaking, the guy's a lean, over 200 pounds lean. That's not a small guy. Yeah, his lifts are unusually good. Clearly extreme world record level, but he's still a big dude. But back over to those points. When you find the exceptions to the rule that you think, not only does it make you look dumb, because then you can't take anything practical from it, you don't factor in that if we know X is better than Y, if someone gets pretty good results on Y, what would be their potential if they did X? It would be way higher. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.